CEF presenters slides.
Welcome to the Virtual Center Excellence Classroom. Welcome CEF and the Dutch constituency. Welcome Albania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Romania, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Moldova, Ireland, and welcome Australia. Mike Mitrovic, I'm your facilitator, and I would like to welcome you to the 4th webinar organized by the CEF as part of Webinar Series 2017 and the 2nd webinar as a part of the Tax Policy and Administration Learning Program. I'd like to thank to our partners, Dutch Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Finance of Slovenia, and the International Monetary Fund. I'd like to state that we are recording the webinar together with the materials. The recording will be uploaded and available on our online learning campus. And in order to have the better quality of the sound, please use the mute button. For technical tips, we would like to mention that we encourage questions and comments. Please expand the chat button on the right hand side of your screen, and please send to everyone so that I can see the questions. And after each presentation, after each session, we will have the discussion, and after we finish all the presentations, we will also have one discussion in method. So that many of you already know, CEF as a regional knowledge hub supports capacity development and leadership for managing reforms in public management, tax policy and administration, and central banking areas in the Southeast Europe and beyond. We are extremely proud to announce that this month we promote tax policy and administration program. You follow the digital story on our Storyfy channel. Statistics since 2010, we have had more than 1,000 participants only specifically for the tax policy and administration learning initiative. Our program is in line with the EU, IMF, OECD's recommendations, and we customize our learning program to the emerging needs of the beneficiaries and our constituency. Thanks to CEF and tax coordinators for their involvement. You're welcome to register for our events, e-auditing, the labor market, tax compliance, and to enroll in the next webinar on financial management and in control, which will be held on 7th of June. Today we are talking about influencing taxpayers' behavior, the family of three, behavioral insight, behavioral sciences, and behavioral economics, altogether traditional economic strategies with insights from psychology, cognitive science, and other social sciences to discover the many irrational factors that influence decision making. We think it into by understanding people. We create products and services people and taxpayers want to use and find easy to use. It is the time to change the behavior for the better, and today we will see why. We are honored to wish welcome to our prestigious speakers today. Stay tuned and follow the inspiring presentations of our experts with diverse backgrounds and expertise. IMF, Irish Revenue Service, World Bank, Dutch Tax Administration, National Agency for Fiscal Administration of Romania, Dutch Tax Administration, and the last but not the least, our colleagues from the Australian Taxation Office. After each presentation, we open the floor for questions and answers. Feel free also to tweet. You can use the hashtag behavioral economics. And now, yes, also like to mention that after shortly, you will receive also the link to the online survey. We want to be better, and we encourage you to survey. So now I'd like to open the proceedings and give the floor to Mr. Stefan Norman Hansen, who possesses the expertise of the Danish Tax Administration and the International Monetary Fund as a revenue advisor in Southeast Europe. Stefan, please.
I'll try to go through IMF priorities in the Balkans, because when I'm doing that, maybe some of your countries in the region will maybe try to, in advance, before we come and give assistance, can try to work on the issues that we are prioritizing. That I will talk about is the prioritize I'm showing here is not arranging. We will take, depending on the development in each country that we are supporting, we will take issue or maybe 2 or 3 issues when we are giving advice from the IMF. But the first thing is strengthening the design of tax administration reform initiatives. And we are basing our advice on that assessment, tax administration diagnostic assessment tool. We recommend everybody to try to have an assessment in your own administration. When we are looking across the assessment that have been done in this region, in 8 countries, we can see that the weaknesses is especially on registration, filing, debt management, and audit. And that is some of the most important core tax administration procedures. So we are advising administration to change the design of the reform, or maybe establish a reform agenda. Then we'll start focusing on these core administration procedures, so that we can assist the administration to mitigate the risks that that assessment will show you. Experience now that a number of administrations in the region actually are on their second generation reform strategies. They have had the TEDAT assessment, they can see their weaknesses, and then we'll try to focus on them. But if you don't have your registration right, if you don't know exactly who your taxpayers are, what kind of taxes they should declare, and if they don't file on time, file very late, if you don't have a filing enforcement strategy, and later if they don't pay, the rest of what you are doing when you are doing the compliance with management will be based on the data to the risk assessment. So this is important that you will have the basics right. Also try to include reform initiatives on changing taxpayers' behavior, and Norman and Bert will elaborate much more on that, because it's important that focusing more on changing the behavior of the taxpayers. But before we do that in a strategic way, we need to have our eyes turned internal, so that we will start changing the behavior of our own audits and on ourselves and our administration. Because if you don't change our behavior towards the taxpayers, they certainly won't change their behavior towards us. One example, and I think that Norman will elaborate on that, is VAT refund procedures. It's almost for sure that a taxpayer will have an audit if he wants to have his VAT refunded. And an audit, not a specific audit, but a comprehensive audit covering several years, then we don't show the right respect to the taxpayers. Altogether, trying to assist the administrations in the region to reform their procedures, to reform their way to deal with taxpayers. The second priority is modernizing the tax procedure codes. In this region, we see, in Balkans, we often see that the procedure codes are so detailed that they tell the reason how many auditors should go on time this audit should take, and that it should go back the last time the audit was there. They are not really for targeted audit, for risk assessment, for working the compliance strategies. And so the procedure codes will tell the administration exactly what they should do in certain situations. And if the best thing that can happen is that it is a good procedure, but normally you will see that a lot of the procedure will be a waste of time. The tax administration needs to have much more flexibility when they are doing the work and when they are designing the procedures. There shouldn't be detailed procedure written in the law. There should be the possibility for the tax administration to design and redesign procedures so they can have to do that. The third thing is in enhancing tax agencies' capacity for strategic planning and performance measures. want to see that the strategic planning is a 3-year period, and then they will look it through every year and see if the strategy needs changes. And the thing that we will try to establish in the regions is that they're implementing performance measurement, so that not only they are designing the procedures, but they are also following up and identifying the right key performance indicators, so that they can measure if they actually will what they have set out in the strategic plannings. This is not an easy task, and not many tax administrations are doing this. We see in the region that the only real target or measurement they have is revenue targets, and necessarily for the best of the administration. We need to see taxpayer service targets. We need to see for satisfaction of the staff in the tax administration, and measures like that. And we are trying to implement these in the region. I think it's also close connected to enhancing tax agencies' capacity for strategic planning is governance and management. And I mentioned leadership, but leadership is not a specific tax administration task. It's a task for all leaders. But to see and assist the administration to establish decision forums. So decision on a basic where everybody is informed, the right persons that to take the decisions should participate, and they be meet on a regular basis. And we are advising. We normally say that a good thing to do is to have reforms. If you have a huge reforms agenda, you should have a committee headed Director General, and then the right managers should be in it, and always a manager from the region should participate. We also like to see compliance committees where all the decisions about the risk, identifying risk, right sectors to mitigate risk in the sector, and establishing the right compliance and the right compliance activities should be dealt with in a compliance committee. And of course, you could have a committee for the normal day-to-day operations. All of these should be headed by a Director General, and it is important to establish and find out who should be in this committee, who are permanent members, and who should participate when specific issues come up in these committees. We always also focus on the organization, right organizing headquarters. That structure is extremely important, and we would like to see headquarters organized on function-based issues. I know that a lot of new and modern tax administrations will organize themselves in another way, but in the region we advise that they should be organized around design, admin responsible for business owner, designing the tax administration procedures, doing rules for how to cope with specific issues on registration, filing, pay management and audit, and follow up in the regions, that what we have asked regions to do actually will be followed. We want to see a strong headquarter that is able to establish the right measurements and follow up on key performance indicators in this, what we could call design areas or design department or business owner department. That department is to identify the support functions, legal, IT, AR, and what you have, because we want the function mixed. People owners should focus on designing the process and giving the right rules to the regions, and they support it on HR and legal and whatever. And they want to have one single department for operations should only be in one department, and of course this department should decide over the region, so that the regions will report into a director responsible for operations, so that you will have these 3 departments. So all of them will be headed by one deputy director or whatever you want to call him, but we want to divide the functions and have headquarters. We also see in the regions that they are structuring themselves in a way that not necessarily all regions need to have all functions in a region, because there could be one, the capital region will probably have a lot of very big companies, and smaller regions in the far from headquarters, we often have only a few large taxpayers, and they will have the same task in volume. So it's supposed to see if there is any task that could be decentralized, not necessarily or not at all in the headquarter, but in one other region. And all regions need to have all tasks. It could be summed up to one region could have a certain number of specific tasks if the main taxpayers are living there. And this is one of the things that we also really want to see, that the tax administration are trying to look at the regions and structure the regions more effectively. And this is one of the very high focus area. And if I should prioritize any of my apart from strengthening the reform designs, I would like to focus on compliance risk management. It's extremely important, and it's the basic way in the travel from doing the work that we have always done and to work taxpayer behavior and influence taxpayers behavior. And fortunately, Bert and Norman will come into that. It is important that you are able to identify the risks for revenue, that you are able to plan these risks, and you are able to act on these plannings and then follow up and see if you're doing the right things. And establish sector programs with the right tools, and certainly identify that all is not necessarily the tool. It could be a tool in the end, because taxpayers need to know that they can be audited, but there are a lot of other tools that Norman and Bert will discuss with you. Finally, to establish tax fraud investigation capacity. When you're working on a compliance risk-based approach and working with influence taxpayers' behavior, it's very important that where you and working with the changing taxpayers, you are working in trust in the taxpayers. So it is important that the people really want to do fraud on the review. They should know that they will be investigated, and we will follow up on the work that they are doing, so that we can get them punished and fined and maybe jailed for that. So when going into a more service-oriented approach, it also needs to be proved that we have a tougher part of the administration. These are the areas that we are working with, and I want to finish by saying that we really gained a lot of good information on tax administration when we are looking across the assessments. So I only recommend that if your country haven't done a tax assessment, they should ask for it, because it will give you a really good baseline for where you are compared to other tax administration in the region or in the world. The tax are comparing your performance with good practice international, and showing you exactly where you are and where you need to improve your performance. So I can only recommend everybody to do that. And I will finish. If there should be time for any questions, I will take them, or I will participate in the discussion further on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Maybe Bert or Norman, if you would like to comment or to contribute to what Stefan was mentioning about that or the compliance risk management, just quickly, we will have more time in the end after all presentations for the more thorough discussion.
No, thank you. Later on in my presentation, I mentioned the same themes that as Stefan did. So
we could proceed, and it is a great opportunity to listen to Mr. Norman with the background of the Irish Revenue Service and the International Monetary Fund. What experiment Irish Revenue undertook and what effect personalized handwritten letters sent with service could play, and what are the lessons for us all?
Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I worked for many years with the Irish Revenue. I don't work for them anymore, but I do have close connections with the Revenue Service still. Not speaking for them. I worked for time on occasional missions from 2006 onwards, starting in Africa and events around the world. And I did the fund full time in late 2010, early 2011, and worked for them for nearly 4 years. During the Revenue Service, changed hugely. I think, as a very old-fashioned, when I joined it in the 1970s, a very old-fashioned coercive type organization that wasn't getting good results. In the course of my career, I saw the way we worked change completely, and that made us coercive, made us more successful. And for the countries in Central and Southeast Europe who are linked to this is really the most important message that I have for you. That balanced approach to tax, an understanding of their environment and their concerns, an understanding of their motivations, help improve plans in ways that I think traditional coercive approaches on investigation, actually based on a punitive approach, can never do. I began to think about behavior, a more modern tax system. The traditional assumptions that we operated under were that taxpayers acted rationally to maximize their profits, and if they did that, if that meant reducing their tax payments, evasion or avoidance, they would do it. The odds of not being detected to be attractive. This standard economic theory that says just try to maximize their profit, the laws of economics, then they will be producing up to a certain point where the marginal cost of the last unit produced equals the profit. That will economy, and it synchronizes the economy with citizens' desires. Citizens are seen as consumers, maximize their satisfaction from consuming based on their income. Maximizing on one hand and maximizing consumer satisfaction on the other was the way I learned economics. I learned economics up to this level, but I learned previous century was no sign of the discipline of behavior. But the reach of the world economy, I think, points to a large number of, and not that the standard model can't explain. Ireland, for example, we financial crash, the economy seemed to be performing perfectly well in of the traditional economic theories. We've had, in common with other countries, great difficulty in recent years in incentivizing the construction of houses for our population, even though the economy is growing again, our population is growing, but housing market is not responding to the traditional stimuli. So there's a lot happens in the economy that the traditional just does not seem to be capable of explaining. certainly, I think what really changed in the Irish revenue about our traditional approaches was that we can essentially, we said it was rational for taxpayers to evade. We knew that people, in particular, were inclined to evade, and took a very punitive approach involving a difference. Taxpayers submitted a tax return for property tax. Our inspectors habitually upgraded that assessment by 20 to 30% and demanded payment of it. Resisted. And back on it, it seems to me that the which take the form of appeals to our assessments were not people aiding, they were protesting about the adequacy of our understanding of business realities and their true taxable income. It seems to have been trying to read on it and study it. Planetary power of economics by providing it with realistic psychological foundations. And if you look at the work of Professor Eric Kirchler from the University of Vienna, research and his gist of the research on economics and taxation suggests that people don't even where the chances of being affected are relatively low, which they think in most economies. We need to improve our understanding of taxpayers to make it realistic. We need to account people's emotions and assumptions. In particular, it's to me now, and on behavioral economics, emphasizes this, that a sense of fairness under social preferences and interactions. Some of the textbooks on behavioral economics, they are around working out what this concept of fairness means and what tax administrators. I think it means that there are new obligations to incurred by both parties to any transaction. That includes transactions between revenue service and taxpayers. Affecting that we have new rights and obligations, and that transactions are based on reciprocity. Actually, I treat you fairly, the same to me. Reciprocal benefits. If everyone cooperates, then everyone is better off. And strong reciprocity means that there is acceptance that cheating will be punished, even if that imposes costs on some parties to the transaction. The literature tells us that if economic agents like tax and tax authorities, if strong reciprocity exists, inclined to spread through that group, and either in the direction of fairness. I think that is really good news for us as an implementers of public policy, because it can create new social norms. For example, I think we have some tax evasion acceptable in the last 10 or so years, because people really transactions are based on trust, and the person is publicly known as a tax evader, then other businesses are less likely to want to deal with that person, banks are less likely to want to loan money, the taxpayer sector tend to fund them. So the way we've behaved, changes in our law and procedures, from a punitive dimension. For example, serious tax evasion is now published. The evaders are put in the newspapers. On the other hand, if you're a serious evader, you are likely to get a much better deal from the tax authorities here. And this new norms, and I've seen similar changes in the areas of the law on drink and driving, and in the law of litter in cities. And reciprocity matters. If you treat me right, I will treat you right. We tested this in the CEF course on taxation that we've been giving for the last few years. Use a simple game. And I just want to mention this. It's not scientific, but a lot of evidence from all over the world, and I'll give some references later, that this actually matters. Simple game. Divide the class into two groups of people. On a course, we'll create of 10 people, 10 group of 2 people. The people as a proposer, and then comes an acceptor. And I give each proposer an imaginary €10. They can, but they need to share it with the other person on their team, who is the acceptor. If is unhappy with the offer and refuses it, I get my money back. So, Poe has the obligation to share some of the money, and the actor has the power to reject it. Offer and acceptance. There's no negotiation. It's a written offer and a written response. Now, I've done this with with a class of 50 in Indonesia. So experiments are not scientific, but in every time I've done this little game, almost all fair offers are accepted. I would say 90-something% of fair offers are accepted. 50 are close to it. Offers, fair offers, half are rejected, but it depends on how unfair they are. Over of this game, a solid negotiation takes place, and an acceptable equilibrium tends to be reached. In other words, after a number of rounds, reciprocity seems to kick in. Interesting is that if I divide the class into 2 groups and separately about this game, and can mention the word fairness in my introduction, Group A makes more fair offers. Same things matter. Generally, if an introduction said this is a game that how people interact, it's relevant to taxation because it's money, an element of negotiation. It tests how people engage with each other. But if I use the word fairness, even just in passing, here's the word fairness, makes more offers. And I think how things, therefore, these are the things I've learned, how we think things, how we present or doing matters, and this matters to people. On framing, I'll give an example of for real world. When a few years ago the Irish government needed more money from tax on local property tax, there was a large amount of political resistance. The way the government responded and the Revenue Service responded was to make the tax ultra simple. They invested in data on the property market. They shared data with house agents to get an idea of property valuations. They compared it with the data available to the revenue on property, and they supplied everyone with an evaluation of their property, their private residence. They gave them again many ways of paying. So it was assessed, but since from the revenue, it was each ways you could pay. No excuse not to pay. Never there was resistance. And one of the opposition groups in the government, their deputy leader, was articulate. She said that her family would refuse to pay the tax. So this was a parliamentarian refusing to pay the tax. By announcing on the very first day that the system was open for use, that 40% or more of people had already paid. And then they framed it and said, this is easy to pay. A large number of citizens have paid, and those who intend or think you can get away with not paying would be aware of this. Because people, it seems, are going to pay. And then they gave weekly bulletins on the payment rate, which quickly reached 90% and higher by the final date for payment. And that discussion and that discourse, the politician that opposed it said that she didn't want to be tried as a tax evader and would pay the tax and would do it in the future politically, but would be a compliant taxpayer. And we framed the revenue had framed this to indicate that the majority of householders were going to pay. These proposed acceptor games have been carried out in universities all over the world. We had from Professor Liam Delaney, an Irish behavioural economist. We had talked to the CEF from Professor Luigi Bettoni, an Italian economist, interested in tax and fairness and compliance. And invariably, people in the game reject, the acceptors reject unfair offers. Matters. And as one participant at the stage when we played these games, one proposers could not accept one partner could not accept an unfair offer. He said, you'll get free money, and has replied at the end of the game, yes, but you're not being fair. So if people use free money because they feel they're being treated unfairly, it's all over the world, validate this, then I think we as tax authorities need to consider fairness and put it at the heart of how we behave.
We also have some questions when you finish the presentation from Bert. I would just like to ask you if you could turn on the camera button to press it. We cannot be able to see you during the presentations, maybe now in the discussion. Oh, super, now you're with us. Excellent. So Bert, would you like to give some conclusions? And Bert, quickly, and Bert will ask you a question.
Can I just move quickly through the remaining slides? And
yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Okay, this one I think pretty well. Oh, my slide.
We will sometime after we finish with all the presentation. Yes, please go ahead.
Can you?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, my slides seem to have stuck for some reason. Here we go. Okay. So, from some of the work of Professor Eric Kirchler, he says taxpayers are more prepared to comply when treatment rests on a positive, trusting foundation. Support then become important. And interesting, for a long time we emphasised in the Irish Revenue Service, but we understand the link between service and support and compliance. Simpler law, legal interpretation services are needed for different areas of tax law. So electronic tax declarations make it easier to comply. Real self-assessment where we accept what is filed, risk analyze it is important, and certainty when returns are filed. In other words, when the files are returned, it should be accepted and processed, and a sent to the taxpayer is evidence that risk aversion is in the case. See, as Stefan said, VAT when claimed should be paid once being subjected to risk analysis. Fast payment of refunds, I think, is important for the credibility of tax agencies. Variation in compliance treatment, the attitude and behavior of the taxpayer. An active, rather punitive attitude in audit is really, I think, important. Prompted voluntary disclosure. I prompted showing what you know about particular sectors is really important. If you feel a sector is risky, including the Irish Revenue, tell taxpayers in the sector why the sector is risky, what the risks are, and how to fix them. If they fail to respond to those prompts, are sectoral compliance initiatives launched. Cops and robbers' attitude by the tax authorities reduce the tendency to be compliant. And my experience, Kirkland is absolutely true. We must have good risk analysis and then focus on the worst behaviours and the ones who will not respond to voluntary prompting. And it raises issues too about the nature purpose of audit. In view, behavior, unless they're seriously engaged in premeditated and documented fraud, then I think the general aim of audit ought to be just taxpayers correcting mistakes and bad practice, and to put them on a proper footing for the future. And I think the way countries conduct audit, going back over many years in the past, doing large liabilities that can't be paid, is actually counterproductive. So increasingly in Ireland, the role is to correct behaviour and put the compliance plateau and keep them there. A number of features that tend to improve compliance: increased tax rates, penalties, but I mean for serious and deliberate fraud only. Greater audit probability. But I think it needs doing, because audit is an expensive and powerful tool, and it needs to be used only in the cases that most deserve it. In other words, where there's clear risks, where tax sector have not responded to prompts to improve their behaviour, then I think audit comes into play. But even then, I think there's a role for prompted voluntary disclosure. In other words, to incentivize compliance even at the start of an audit by allowing a taxpayer to make a voluntary disclosure that attracts lower interest and lower penalties, but where the tax is always paid in full. In other words, incentivize the kind of behaviour we want to see, even in an audit scenario.
Okay. Do you have some conclusions also to add, so that we can encourage?
Yes. The Kirkland conclusions are there for people to look at. Kirkland mentioned social norms matter. In other words, I gave about the local property tax in Ireland, social norms clearly were established around people were going to pay this tax. And that made it more difficult for people not to pay it when they saw that everyone else was doing so. Yeah, basic conclusions I would we
have a lot more questions to go. Yes, we could go straight to the conclusions. Yes.
are very important. Fairness matters, and tax compliance tends to be higher when there's a good, when taxpayers know that their tax payments are properly used by the government. But the whole point of behavioral economics, these are my conclusions. Behavioral sites explain what taxpayers do more than traditional views based around coercion. Compliance approaches work better than traditional ones, where prompt voluntary disclosure taxpayer support get better results. Behavioral economics tells us that there are a wider range of treatments available rather than relying wholly on audit, and in particular, service, support, and taxpayer education, prompt response to queries, and payment of refunds. This gives its proper subordinate role in management of tax compliance and puts us at the center of things for the right reasons. Emphasizes good risk analysis and of taxpayer choices. And if we want taxpayers to change their behavior, this main message: if we want taxpayers to change their behavior, then we must, as tax administrators, jurors. And that's the essence of what I have to say. And we're at the end of my slides. There is some information on some of the sources that I've based this talk on.
Yes,
that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Norman. We will share all the materials, and also we will provide additional materials for our participants and the audience. If I may suggest that we take the questions from both after the presentations. We have 3 more to go. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And let's proceed with the Dutch approach. Bert, how does the Dutch create cooperative environment in which all taxpayers meet their obligations? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bert van den Born, Strategic Advisor from the Tax and Customs Administration of the Netherlands.
The first slide I will show you is the Parliament of the Netherlands in The Hague. Thank you, Diana, at the beginning. This is the Parliament in The Hague. And why do I show you the Parliament in The Hague? Because this is where it all begins. In November last year, the Dutch Parliament discussed the enforcement strategy of the Dutch tax administration. Of course, the last 10 years, we use compliance risk management and we have an enforcement strategy, but now we share it with our members of parliament, and that's very important. We have a problem. Are you there?
We can
okay.
see you. Yeah,
the next one. Influence taxpayers' behavior. When we talk about changing of behavior, we're talking about private persons, small end companies, large companies, and about advisors. But important is change the behavior of our staff or employees, including the management. As I mentioned already, we must stop the cops and robbers attitude. For each, we have a different approach. And important at the beginning is design a solid, simple, and fraud-resistant legislation. Oh. Why is taxpayers' behavior? That's the negative arguments. The method fails. Society is getting more open at the moment. Trade is global. In the Netherlands, each year we have 10% more enterprises. I can't put them all. There are too many, and their activities are not only regional but also international. So to find another strategy. And if we have more tax staff, the administration becomes a control and repressive institute instead of an institute that collects money for the general welfare of its citizens. But motive why we influence taxpayers' behavior, it use the tax cap reduces this staff and of course brings less costs. And as mentioned already, fair share is very important. People want to pay the taxes if they have the opinion that other people also pay taxes. And be more equality in the relationship between government and citizens, between administration and taxpayers. Oh. Too quick. Is influenced by the government, the of the government, the behavior of politicians, but we influence that. But we can talk with them about their behavior, about trust. Tax is also influenced by tax authorities. They deliver services, information, communicate, attitude. For the government to show what is done with the tax revenues, how we spend them. Tax is also influenced by tax accountants. Very important. A lot of taxpayers are completely dependent on their accountant. And accountants are compliant, taxpayer compliant too. So we invest a lot of effort in a good relationships with the accountants and advisors. Influenced by other taxpayers. People meet each other on parties, in sports, everywhere on the street, and talk about taxes. And if the general attitude to taxes is positive, that will influence the other ones. This is important too. I give you an example. A few years ago, we had some high water, a flood in a part of the Netherlands. A lot of farmers hadn't any income for half a year, but could pay taxes about a year. And the government decides, the tax administration decides to let them pay their taxes 1 year later. So the economic situation, so in that year they fill in completely a good tax return, but you have to pay a year later. Already mentioned, and the tax rate is also important. Norman mentioned that before. Mentioned the Dutch approach. We have an enforcement strategy approved in Parliament. We have private persons, small enterprises, and large enterprises. For each segmentation, we have a different approach. We have the management of the tax administration is involved with these changes. The system of risk management. Stefan talked about that. A system of risk management is very useful to decide which taxpayers you will audit and which you will not audit. Forms must be approved, be relied on. We tax with companies. Companies have a tax control framework, and in this we have an agreement how to about taxes. And if you fill in the tax return, don't look at the tax return because it's okay. We discussed that before. we have been in the last 10 years for all our employees on behavior change. We opened two online platforms for tax accountants and tax advisors. So one of them is on wage taxes, and the accountants and tax advisors can discuss with other and with the Dutch tax administration about new laws, about changing in law, and other things. And the goal is to fill in a good tax return, correct every taxpayers on radio, television, newspapers, magazines, about in laws and about their obligations. It gives guidance, information, to understand the business of our taxpayers. If they meet the taxpayers, it's important that they are on the same level, they understand them. And we've said on the past, you can't change the behavior of the past, but you can change the behavior of the future. Or information-based, we get a lot of data, and the taxpayers know that we do this. And there's enforcement. Talked about this, it is the same as balanced responses. The attention to the taxpayer he or she needs, and is a relationship between to his fiscal behavior. Real-time contact with our taxpayers, so not about last year or about 2 years ago, no, about this year. And our taxpayers don't want to fill in a wrong tax return. Over 90% is compliant, but sometimes they make mistakes. We try to prevent them making mistakes. We can more instead after tax return, because through tax return it costs more time, more irritation, and so on. There are, on one side we have prevention, focus, compliance, and rewarding of good behavior. On the other side there's distrust, focus on it, scare not behavior, and bad behavior. Of course, we to the left side on the prevention side, but staff is still repressive. That's okay, we talk about that. The old way, and it's very difficult to change the old habits. But more having behavior than repression, in our opinion. Our approach is enterprises and individuals are in the middle of our interest. We help them to be compliant, and this a lot of this is rewarding. This is 15 years with our staff or employees. We get trainings about problem-solving attitude, being able to build and maintain relations on several levels, motive and behavioral aspects, and of course, our employees must be an expert in fiscal and in accountancy, but also have skills in and behavioral change. At the end of the presentation, conclusion, in tax behavior of taxpayers will lead to increasing revenues. Presentation, Diana.
Thank you so much, Bert. You shared with us which pattern to follow: the mutual trust and respect, the synergetic approach, Thank you once more. And now we can proceed with the application of behavioral insights model. Mrs. Deb Milton from the Behavioral Insights Lead, Individuals Australian. Deb, please share with us what results and what impact customer-centric approach towards citizens' interaction and engagement with the ATO and the government as a whole. Come.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we can.
And can you...
Yes, please go ahead.
Beautiful, thank you. I've just been asked to speak for a few minutes about the behavioural insights approach in the ATO. Just going to start by showing you a little graphic of how we've actually embedded this capability within the organisation. This capability is really only just over a year old, and what we found previous to this was that the behavioural insights was very patchy and very ad hoc in the organisation. So as the organisation has moved towards a much more client-focused, client experience focus, we've decided to have a much more deliberate approach around the application of behavioural insights. Here, as you can see, is a small behavioural insights unit, and then within each of the business lines or departments, you may call them, we have behavioural insights leads and champions. So what we do here is embed a self-sustaining behavioural insights capability through this network of behavioural insights and champions. Our commissioners of taxation were very keen that we didn't create a central BI unit, but beyond that, and actually created an understanding across the office of some of the behavioural strategies that can actually improve and influence client behaviour. The behavioural insight unit provides a very important support function in terms of supporting those behavioural insight leads and champions and helping to grow awareness of behavioural insights across the business, but also help them to identify opportunities to solve some of the business problems where the problem is considered to be human behaviour. So just quickly there, the role of a BI lead is to support their champions, and BI champions are looking to actually share their knowledge and expertise right across the business to actually embed fully in everything that we do. When we're actually trying to solve a business problem where human behaviour is considered to be the core component of that, we do have some primary questions that we focus on. And we do tend to focus on measurable behaviour change. So when we first meet with an internal business client, we'll be asking them, what is the behaviour change that you want? And sometimes we hear the words, things like more engagement, better tax moral, but these aren't actually a specific action. So we always try and get them to refocus. What do people do differently? We ask them what the current behaviour is. Do they actually have a baseline from the data that can tell them what the current position is? What are the existing interventions that you have in place? And is there an opportunity to improve any of these, or do we actually need a whole new strategy? We have the possibility to trial this approach in a sample of the population before rolling it out more broadly to everyone, and ask how are these results going to be measured. So there are a few key principles when we're working with internal clients. We very much try to make it measurable. If you can't measure it, we ask ourselves, is it the right activity to do? Now, we've actually learned from applying behavioural insights is that sometimes it is actually very difficult to measure the outcomes, but there's been opportunities where we've been able to actually apply some behavioural insights principles just to actually improve the business as usual work, such as using it in our audit conversations to try and influence behaviour. People are actually talking to clients on the phone. A very difficult thing to measure, but certainly has to be quite a much more engaging approach for our staff when they've used that. Try to be very pragmatic. We understand that we can't always trial things and other corporate imperatives that are driving the assistance that we give to our internal clients, regardless of the challenges in trialling and measurement. So a few examples of some of the work that we do. A lot of our efforts are focused on making it easy as possible for people to get it right in the tax system. It's for us to underestimate the impact on behaviour that small irritants in following a process can have on shaping behaviour. So trying as much as possible to make it easy for people to do the right thing is a really important strategy for us to follow. The most successful recent strategies that we have been testing is doing some real-time pop-up messages, our online tax lodgement tool, and encouraging willing participation and to deter non-compliance by taxpayers. So what's been happening in that situation is when people completed their information, work-related expense claims were quite outside of the norms for people with similar income and in similar occupations. They'd get a real-time prompt asking them to review and potentially change their claims before lodging their tax return. And we found these people saw this nudge. A higher proportion of these taxpayers actually reduced their work-related expense claims prior to lodging compared with taxpayers who did not receive a nudge. A lot of work around letters and using SMS, very successful in terms of the effectiveness with those SMSs, and the constant focus there is personalising the information, making those messages just in time, reward the desired behaviour, and plain English. And through a deliberate text messaging strategy in 2014, an extra $949 million was raised, which is a significant amount. We've done quite a lot of work in our letters over the years, and if you're new to behavioural insights, I'd suggest that that's actually a very good place to start. This is an example on the right here that you can see of one of our early that we tested in depth. We added colour, tried the information more salient with using text boxes, call out some social norms in there as well. This one probably doesn't actually sell how good the letters are because it's got quite a different variables in it, but we actually found that these news that were rolled out in 2014 and 15 resulted in a 6.5% increase in recipients finalising their debt within 30 days and a 6% increase in recipients reducing their debt, so by part payment 30 days. So that was all I was going to cover today. I was only asked to talk for about 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm going to leave it at that, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you much, Deb. If we agree, we can now wish a warm welcome to National Agency for Fiscal Administration from Romania, Mr. Alin Cristian Preda. You will present the program that NAFA is implementing, and you know the CEF. You have participated at our workshop from enforced to voluntary clients. So please, the floor is yours. Can I do right now, Alin? The audio, is it connected? No. The beginning here. Right, you the audio on the quick start menu. If you could. You can hear it? Yes? We'll wait the settings. We are waiting Alin to connect the audio settings. Maybe we can now position to the norm and just quickly to recap, to summarize what we now go to Bert. Right, Bert, you're with us. Oh, I'm back.
No.
Now we have the sound. Okay, so we'll then continue with Aline.
Conference, dat werkt weer anders. Want daar is de hele factuur gewoon ingesteld, hè?
Ja, maar dat kun je ook met zo.
Okay, so Aline, to give Aline the presenters, right?
Aline is right. We are waiting just for the sound.
Aline, right now, the sound, can you say something? Okay. Maybe they can then, Bert,
Clear?
we can now pose some questions to the Norman, and we will see if Aline...
understandable or
Question for Norman, you wanted to pose...
Yeah, it's about the emotion and rational behavior for taxpayers. And at the beginning, told us that the taxpayers' behavior is influenced by rational thoughts. I'm not completely agree with that. I give you an example. In the Netherlands, we have inheritance tax and gift tax.
Mm-hmm.
During lifetime, you earn money, you pay taxes during lifetime, and then you die. And children have to pay inheritance tax. And that they're very angry about this, and this influences behavior because they are very emotional. Their dad died, and then they have to pay taxes again about the same money. So this but one needs to pay this 2 billion euros. But this is very emotional. We call them the emotional taxes: inheritance tax and gift tax.
Yes, Norman?
I agree with what Bert has said. That it's by economic theory, economic theory, but not necessarily by tax officials, I think.
No.
So, yeah, I agree completely. And what I was trying to make was that traditional economics assumes rational behavior. We wise as tax officials to recognize the roles of emotion, subjectivity, in making choices. And I agree with you that the deaths and inheritance taxes are particularly sensitive.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, when we covered what we thought was tax evasion around the spot, we'd identified a cohort of people buying and selling property, tax. We that some of those people may be executors selling property where they were selling the family home, and we did not want to send a threatening letter to that group of people. So we actually conducted a randomized control trial where we took 4 taxpayers who had been selling property without paying capital gains tax, and did a randomized control trial so that 100 of them were not written to, and we did a very careful letter asking the other 200 whether or not they were saying this as executors for a deceased parent. I think the tax treatment was very different. And I do really need to use different ticks and different styles of letter when you're dealing with these sensitive issues. And that enabled us to identify those taxpayers who were simply disposing of a rental home following the death of a parent versus those who were actually engaging in property trade on their own account without paying taxes.
Thank you very much.
Norman. I have still another question.
Bert, if I just may propose, now we go to Aline. I think his sound now works. Then when Aline finish, then we will go back to you. Thank you. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Go. Okay, so I'm going to talk about our program, the Virtual Private Space, the VPS. So, by using the VPS, our taxpayers can be informed about their unpaid fiscal obligations and about decisions regarding taxation. The taxpayers can also check out how their employer declares social contributions, and we offer some other services as well. Distance services has become a part of our administration's long-term strategy for strengthening the relationship with the taxpayers. Subsequently, this project is also for bilaterally tightening the bond with the taxpayer. Thus, the agency strives to become more a quality service provider. Using an easily accessible online platform, the communication and the information exchange becomes much more convenient and in tune with the current era, so we can follow up on the people developing needs and obligations. So, here's the plan. New implementation on the VPS platform targets the availability of data for our 394 declaration. The declaration is about the supplies and purchases made on national territory that are subjected to VAT taxing. The proposed deadline for this project is due to July 2017, and as such, the taxpayer is to be confronted with the results of the cross-checks being conducted by our administration on their declarations and on other sources of information. Thus, the taxpayer is invited to proactively modify and or clarify any possible errors or inconsistencies in his declarations that have been encountered within the data that they through the 394. We have some keywords now. This project should increase the level of positive communication and the presence of our administration, and it should ensure a stronger relationship with the taxpayer. The strategy is effectively using the taxpayer to aid us, to keep them in check, and it gives them a good chance for correction and cooperation as well. So objectives for our plan is we should the amount of tax evasion and fraud, while at the same time also increasing a positive attitude towards our administration. Should the project be implemented successfully, the relationship with the taxpayer should increase. We should get more funds for the state budget. And this is also a change in, let's say, philosophy, or rather the paradigm. The paradigm shift is about helping us help you. That's the message that we're trying to transmit to the taxpayer. So this would pretty much sum up my presentation. If there are any questions?
Thank you, Aline, so much. So
thank you for
now, yes. So now, maybe Bert and Stefan, if you would, Bert, you elaborated, you mentioned it about the training of your teams, tax administration, and maybe Stefan, you know in the region. Maybe you could give us some more details on what are countries and what in general the tax administrations, how to increase the responsiveness to the customers. Just shortly, we have a couple of more minutes to go and to conclude the webinar.
Question to
I'll be
Ellen.
happy to start if it's okay.
Yes, if we could just ask you for the sound. Okay, now it's better, Aline. So you're Stefan.
Question for Ellen. Thank you for your presentation. I enjoyed it, but I have a question for you. You're talking about the paradigm shift. How did you manage to change the behavior of your colleagues?
Change the behavior of our colleagues.
Of your administration?
Well, actually, earlier I was talking about this project about sending a message. As just like Norman was talking earlier, it's about framing the way we do things in such a way we transmit the message that we want to cooperate with the taxpayers. At the moment, we're trying to achieve this paradigm shift. I mean, it's an implementation. It's in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Could I give a few comments? Comments? Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you? Oh.
Yes.
Okay. I would just like to comment about the situation in the region for some of the things that we have been discussing. In my opinion, when we are discussing with the directors and the management team in the regions, they are aware of the need for influence taxpayers' behavior in another way than only doing audits. It seems to be very difficult for them to tackle it. First of all, because of what I mentioned about the tax procedure codes. As long as the tax procedure codes are so very detailed on what they have to do when they experience some problem, it will be very difficult to change that until the tax procedure codes are changed. And they are struggling also with the culture in their own administration that they need to deal with, and that's not an easy thing. So most of them are now starting to do change management activities actually. But what I think when we are talking about fairness and influence taxpayers' behavior and also change our own way to deal with taxpayers, I think we could use the press a lot more. Now press, the newspapers and the televisions are sitting waiting for stories that we will put out, but mostly stories where companies have been doing fraud or where the tax administration have been some bad administration. I think that we could use the much more if we take the initiative to tell them what kind of reforms we will do, and also they need a budget that they could go on the press themselves, do surveys, do information campaigns and activities. We have seen that that's a big impact on the situation. Not many tax administrations in the region have a budget to these kind of activities. So I think it would be a good thing.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to add something? Roberto had also one question for you, and I suggest that if you would like to pose a question to the Australian Taxation Office, this is the first time on behavioral economics to have them on our webinar. First time to have them on our webinar.
First, want to say something about what Steph said about the situation in the region. We 10 years or more to change our own behavior from action to prevention. Very difficult process, and still, when there's an incident with fraud, for example, at this moment, still staff wants to be more repressive. So this repression to prevent is a long but a good way. So be disappointed if you are not reach your goal next year.
And And I would like to ask Deb Milton from the Australian Taxation Office, how could you comment on to what Bert just said, and does it depend really on the cultural, economic, and political profiles of each state? Since it's a long-term process, it cannot happen for it. Deb.
Can you?
Yeah.
So just in response to one of those things that was just raised, I think that success at actually influencing the behaviours of our staff and then more broadly implementing those strategies really has to be top-driven. And we've really seen a significant shift within our organisation of moving away from just audit clients-based activities as the solution to issues. We know that it's not. Our commissioners often talk about the revenue that's raised through compliance as being a pile of money where every dollar that comes in is actually equal to $1 in spending power. But that the revenue we collect from clients and audit and prosecution activities is actually a very small pile. And every dollar that comes in, certainly in the individuals area where I work, those are only worth about 20 cents in spending power. So communicating that information to our staff and having them actually understand that, yes, audit and compliance type activities have a very important place in the work that we do, in strategies that we can implement that influence willing participation, provide much greater return on investment. And so that's why there's been such a deliberate approach to actually consider behavioural strategies as we've moved forward with our client experience model, which is what we've actually implemented in the ATO. Addressed all of those issues, but it was certainly something that I've been thinking about.
Yes, thank you so much, and certainly the topic is very interesting, and we are trying to also encompass it into the next year's program and to organize more webinars or events. I think that it is the time to take years of learning from behavioral economy to embrace new thinking and apply them in every life. And Bert, sorry, just what you wanted to, and then I would like to give the final conclusion and to thanks to all. Bert, please.
Said about revenues. In the Netherlands, about 6% of the revenues are a result of auditing. So, and 9% is a result of services, just that things go in a proper way. So investment and services gives much more revenues than in audits. But you need audits to this compliant. So, but completely.
Yep.
I would just like to extend my gratitude to the speakers, to the audience. Thank you very much for the discussion. You could have some more question, or yes, I have one question for Norman. Please, Aline. Aline, if you can ask Norman, or do you want me to? So the question to Norman is, how did you manage to change the attitude of the staff, Norman? If we could, since the 70s till the present day.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So, did you hear the question?
I think yes, I did. The answer is we changed it very slowly, putting core service training into our training programs. It involved publishing and discussing with businesses and with accountants taxpayers charter. It involved producing customer service ticket standards and making them and publishing them annually in our annual report. And it really our managers exhibiting the kind of pro-customer behavior that our documents so it was a long, this is not a thing that happened overnight. It took a good years, but it'd be institutionalized in our training, in our every tax office had a large copy of the customer service charter. For some, the enclosed copies of the charter with all our comments and so on. So it doesn't overnight, but has to be followed by management consistently, really over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Comment from me?
Yes, quickly. Yes,
I just got. I got the impression from some of the comments on compliance activities is all about audit. I want to emphasize that in this region, when we are advising on compliance risk management, this is about identifying risk and then put a comprehensive plan, not an audit plan, but a plan in all kind of activities, starting with risk activities. So a compliance risk management approach is for my, and when we are implementing it, not an audit activity. It's ending out in an audit activity, just to clarify.
Good. And if you all agree, we could proceed with the webinar for all for all the audience present today to continue this never-ending discussion. I would like to thank you all once again, speakers, the audience. Thanks to Ida and Alexander and Gregor for the technical support. Just to restate that your feedback is precious, so please fill in the survey we will be sending to you shortly. And recording and the presentations, additional materials, and also the questions, if you would like, if you would have, please also, you will have my contacts to write to me, and we will ask the speakers and answer to you. You're also welcome to follow our CEF webpage for more information about the upcoming webinars and events. So thank you all again, and have a great day. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Paul, for the comment.
Yes. If you agree that we can organize one webinar all together, then you can write to me now in the chat box, or write an email, and we will set it. Bye, Aline. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Verify Norman.